Well, last week we were studying this idea of how to build for the future. And we started out by looking at uh, what the church ought to be now and in the future. For instance, how many of you have thought about what this church is going to be like in 10 years or 20 years? You know, we're going to have new elders because I'm not sure if I'll be around. I'm 73. I'm over half done with my life.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
so
seeing you're gonna be 146, Russ, you'll still be here.
that's right. I've got a long time
Got a
going.
long way to go.
Oh, my kids don't think so. So, the other day, my son asked me, he said, Dad, how heavy is that gold tooth you have in your mouth?
What's it worth?
I do have a gold tooth from 1976, so
Don't sleep too soundly.
he's gonna check it out. Yeah.
Don't sleep too soundly.
Watch Russell at the funeral, will you?
I'll be.
If he's got a pair of pliers,
Yeah.
stand next to him, okay?
All right.
Uh,
You want me to help him or stop him?
no, don't help him.
Okay.
I'll already have it.
That'll already have it in his hand. Let's turn to Titus chapter 2. And we've been talking about the role of the young people in this congregation and how we can help prepare them for the future. So if you have your outline, I want you to look at the summary, what the church ought to be now and in the future. So when you think about what it's going to be now and what it should be in the future, I want to read Titus 2 verses 6 through 8. So let's look at that in our Bibles. I think Titus is really concerned about the churches on the island of Crete. And Paul is writing to him, telling him how those churches should prepare for the future. Because he's really looking for them to have a strong church, and many strong churches on that island. So he's talking about the future. And in this section, he's talking about the young men and the young women, because he knows there's a lot of young people in that church. And we need to look and see what our responsibility is for our young people here and what we should do for them. So let's read Titus 2, verses 6 through 8. And Bill, would you read those for us, please? Verses 6 through 8? Yeah.
Similarly, encourage the young men to be self-controlled. In everything, set them an example by doing what is good. In your teaching, show integrity, seriousness, and soundness of speech that cannot be condemned, so that those who oppose you may be ashamed, because they have nothing bad to say about us.
Okay, he's talking about another generation. And usually when Paul talks about a problem, it's because he's worried about the churches and he knows they have problems with their young people. Now let's back up to read about the women. Go back to verse 3 and let's start reading verse 3. Bill, 3 through 5.
Likewise, teach the older women to be reverent in the way they live, not to be slanderers or addicted to too much wine, but to teach what is good. Then they can train the younger women to love their husbands and children, to be self-controlled and pure, to be busy at home, to be kind, and to be subject to their husbands, so that no one will malign the word of God.
So he's talking about the character of the women in the churches and also the young men, but he's wanting them to straighten up because they're experiencing problems on that in those churches. And he's writing this because when he's talking about an issue, you know those churches are struggling with that issue. So that's why we need to look at this, because we need to take care of our young people, but help them grow up and mature in a way that would be beneficial to the church. So I want you to follow along your outline. We'll just summarize this, what the church ought to be now and in the future. How are important questions we need to answer are right here. Listen to these. What ministries do we offer that focus on the needs of young adults? We answered that last week. Some of us who are older have the view that our young adults are undercommitted. And that's not always true. because they're not undercommitted. Sometimes they're overcommitted. The problem is that many of our young adults are overcommitted, especially if they're parents of young children. There's so many things that they get involved in. They only have so many hours of the day. And a lot of families, their kids are involved in many sports. And they're spending their time in the car, eating in the drive-through. They're running the games. That doesn't include practice. And it's just hard for them to do that. I know our son Russell was the captain of the football, basketball, and baseball team at Taylor. He was never home, you know. He got home for worship and got home for Bible study, but he was there all the time. In fact, when he started at Rochester College, he said, "Dad, I don't want to play any more sports. I'm burned out." So he just focused on being a student. But you know that there's so many things that they're involved in, and that makes it really tough on these families. So not only they're not eating right half the time, but they're in a hurry all the time. And rarely do families have a family night. They don't have a night where they just sit down to dinner. They're running so much. A lot of times they don't have time to do that. And that's one thing that we always had was a Friday night family night. But you have to be intentional about that and make sure they know that Friday night is gone. They're not going to do anything else. They're going to be with the family. So it's something you have to work at, and that's what makes it so tough. So the state of our economy many times requires that both parents work to make ends meet. Do you know any families where the wife doesn't work? It's rare now, isn't it? It's rare to find a family where the wife is able to take care of the home and the kids and the husband works. Yeah, Chuck.
I have to say, that's one thing that we practiced about what our kids were able to do with that. Because it was, quite busy in
Yeah,
her life. But Diane decided she would rather stay at home. And there were some times I wanted a Corvette, so I was trying to squeeze that out. But I believe that one thing that made her the mother that she was that she stayed home.
yeah.
I'm not saying that's for everybody, and I'm not bragging about it, but it's one of those choices that we really worked at.
That's a great commitment. That's a great commitment and a good witness. And I think it tends to measure out in the way your children are raised too. You know, you can tell by looking at Chris and Nick and know that they were raised right, you know. I know you had nothing to do with Diane, sure.
I did. Well, I was working 2 jobs. No.
Oh, that's right. You were working 2 jobs.
No.
But yeah, it's rare that a family works 1 job. It can't be done in a lot of places. I was talking to Drew, he works at UPS, he makes $24 an hour. He said, "Grandpa, I can't buy a house," which is true. On $24 an hour, you can't buy a house. But he's got to figure something out. So he's going to make more money when he starts driving.
How many
What?
bedrooms do you have at home?
Oh,
How many basements?
I got 3 bedrooms, but all 3 of them are filled. No room for Drew. But depending on the rent, everybody has their price.
That's right.
We might put them in there. So our society is working diligently to make family life difficult. Can you think of anything that's going on in our country that makes family life difficult? What are some of the things that our country is doing that makes family life so difficult? Yeah.
Working on Sunday?
Oh, Vance, yeah. They're trying to get us to work Sundays all the time, right? That was one of my no-nos when I worked in the factory.
I had a job where they told me no days are shut down except for holidays.
Yep.
But you had to work 4th of July, you had to work Easter, which is another Sunday. We have to have everybody working on Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm like, half the people ain't gonna be here, and I probably won't be here either if I got protected time.
There you go.
If I got time to stay off, I'm leaving.
There you go. But it's true, they do try. A lot of places try. They didn't used to have baseball games on Sundays when we were kids. Or Wednesdays, actually. I don't remember playing on Wednesday night. I wouldn't be able to anyway. But there's a lot of things that our country's doing to to challenge family life. Any other things that we're doing in our country? Did you have your hand up, Miles?
No.
Okay. Anybody else have any? Yeah, Ed?
Just the cost of living.
Cost of living, yeah. Cost of living is.
Your electric bill is not the price of a really nice car,
Yep.
and twice as much as my first house payment.
No. Tyler?
I don't know if it's one entity to blame, other than maybe the devil. But these cell phones, right? Like, cause we're busy, we're too busy to be in a room with other people. We've
Yeah.
lost the ability to be in the room with or some kids never learned it. You're stressed and anxious, so you run to that, like we run to those phones and they really pull us apart from each
Yeah.
other.
So true, isn't it? I saw a family last week, we were at a restaurant, all four of them were on their phones. They never talked during the dinner. Even when the waitress came to take their order, they acted like it was well, we're busy here, you know, they were busy on their cell phones, but they stopped long enough to make an order. Yeah, Miles?
I know he mentioned working on Sundays, but work in general. Cause I mean, sometimes they have you working, I work with a guy that lives in Ohio and he works in Michigan all week and then he goes home on the weekend. And he's providing for his family, sending money home, but it's like he's only there Saturday and Sunday to see his wife and kids, you know what I mean? And
Wow.
I mean, sure, you're providing for them, but not relationship wise, you know?
Yeah, there's no way, is there?
Yeah.
No way he can't. Fran's boss lived in Chelsea, spent her life on 94. And she would do all her work, call up Fran at work, and they would converse on her way into work on the expressway. And this guy who worked with at Firestone Steel, we punched out at 3 o'clock. He went down to the plow steel, punched in at 3:30 and worked 2 jobs, got 2 retirements, but he lost his wife and his kids. They're gone. Isn't that sad? But it's true. So, yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Miles.
Add on to that, Russ,
Ed?
what happens is, you're working, she may be working, you're working doubles, you're working 10 hours a day.
Yep.
Then comes the day of retirement, you don't even know each other.
No.
You don't even know who you are. She's almost dreading your retirement, coming
right.
home, because she's had this life all her life, it's about to change.
Yeah. Good point. Good
Yes.
point. Yeah. You don't have a relationship after a while, do you? That's so true, man. And that's really the fact of the matter is that many of our young adults are just tired. They're wore out. There's so many things going on. What are we going to do to help them out? We got to think about that, you know. Miles, have you and Gwen talked about that? How much time you're going to have together? I mean, you're both working jobs, aren't you?
Mhm.
Does that interfere in your dating?
Not too much. I mean, maybe when we first started dating, we were real obsessed with each other. Now we're able to, you know, we still obviously hang out as much as we can, but if there's a time where we can't hang out, it's not too big of a deal, you know?
Yep.
But we always make time to hang out when we can.
Drew works 2:30 in the morning till 9:30 in the morning, usually longer than that. And then they have him driving some in the afternoon now. And Maddie, his girlfriend, she works every day. They don't have a lot of time together. I don't know what their marriage is going to be like if he marries her, but things are rough. Yeah, Ed?
Across the street from me, she works days and he works afternoons. So
Really?
they don't see each other at all, most likely.
Wouldn't see much.
My neighbors did that when I was growing up. I think, what kind of life do they have where he's coming home after she's already left, and she comes home after afternoons? They had the weekends maybe.
That's crazy. That is crazy. Well, we need to make sure that we're doing everything possible to teach them the Word of God. We have to present more and more classes and times together where they can come and be a part of a Bible study. That's why I have 2 studies, actually 3 last week. A study at 10:30, 1 at noon, and 1 at 1 o'clock. We've got to present more and more time for our kids to be in our Bible studies. Just Sunday morning's not enough, or just Wednesday night's not enough. We have to make sure they know the Word of God. I tell our students on 12 o'clock downstairs on Saturday, After you're baptized, you're gonna study with me for 7 years, so they better stay in there for 7 years. Some of them gasp, but then the others are saying, okay, that's all right. They enjoy it, don't they, Carol? Yeah, she enjoys it. How long have you been in our Bible study? More than 7 years.
Well, I came here in 11.
2011?
Yeah. and
Wow,
so
you've been studying the whole time.
I thought she meant when she was 11.
Was she- Not when she was 11, no,
Until
no.
2011.
So you were a teenager though, weren't you?
I was.
At one time. Yeah, we have to present more and more opportunities for our kids, our young adults, to spend more and more time in the Bible. How many of you have seen the movie The Forge? Has anybody seen that? Did you really?
No?
Wasn't that the best movie you've ever seen? It's incredible, isn't it? It's about a young man who gets a job at a factory, a small factory. And this boss teaches him about character and integrity and being on time. And then he gets them involved in their Bible study. And then they show his baptism and The Forge. It's really good because this group of men get together and they mentor these young people. And they just present more and more opportunities for them to study the Word of God and be involved in. It's called The Forge. If you ever get to see it, you should watch it. I'm serious.
Is it,
I don't recommend many movies, but that's great.
is
Yeah,
it streaming?
yeah.
Okay, so it's on one of the sites?
Yeah.
The streaming sites?
Yep. And so, was it Hulu or was it Max or
It's on Netflix.
was it?
It's
Mine.
Netflix?
What is it?
Netflix.
Netflix. Okay, I didn't watch it on Netflix, but it's on one of those.
I got something to go home
It's
and
on
watch
several
now.
of them. Vance?
I
What?
got something to go home and watch now.
Yeah, oh, it'll change your life, I'm telling you, it's incredible.
Russ,
Yo,
one of the things that I've have appreciated more and more as I've gotten older, you know, with my dad doing mission work in Chicago and starting 3, 4, 5 different congregations from nothing.
Yeah.
And you'd have a group of people, maybe 10 or 12, and it would grow from there. But we were close knit, we were dependent upon each other. There weren't many of us. And even as a kid, you know, if something had to be done, we did it, whether it was painting or building
Yeah.
or fixing.
Yeah.
The men and the boys, we'd be elbow to elbow working together.
yeah,
And what we've gotten away from that, we've got into the idea that we need to pay somebody to do everything.
that's true.
And we've lost that connection of being here, men and boys, working together. Even if it's
That's right.
1 hour, 2 hours, or 3 hours, it's important for the boys to see that and to listen to the men's conversations as they talk to one another and
Yeah.
talk to them.
That's right.
It's small. It may
It's so
seem
important.
insignificant, but it's
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, that's the one regret I have is around my house, I always did the work, you know, whether it's working on the toilet or whatever, and I never got Russell involved. You know?
Yeah.
That's the one thing I regret.
Yeah.
He should have been. I did teach him a few things about tools, but not like my dad did.
Yeah.
Of course, it was because he wanted me to work, is what it was. But I learned a lot by just being involved in changing light switches, things like that.
Well,
you know?
if you grew up and lived in the 50s, much less the 40s, where there were shortages of everything,
Oh, yeah,
everything was given to the military
that's right.
to fight that war. But
Yeah.
if you grew up in the 50s and the 60s, rarely, you know, people weren't wealthy. This
No.
country wasn't wealthy then. Coming up after the war, you know, in the 60s and 70s,
Yeah,
the United States became very wealthy because they had created all of these factories to build tanks and planes and whatever, and we became much more of a wealthy country.
that's right.
But people didn't have the money rush to pay
Mm-mm.
somebody to come in and fix it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
I
didn't pay
never
a
called a repairman. I did it myself,
That's
you know?
right. That's right.
But that's something I should spend more time
Yeah.
with Russell.
Yeah.
So the secondary focus is encouragement. We need to encourage, not just make opportunities for them to get involved in Bible study, but encouraging one another. That's really important. What do people need when they're struggling? Encouragement, right? We need to encourage them. What do people need when they need to be challenged to do something that may seem out of their normal range of ability? They need encouragement. That's exactly what they need. What does a person who's struggling with their faith need from other people? Encouragement. We've got to encourage our young people. Do they need someone to tell them that they're worthless and are going to hell for messing up? No, they need encouragement. We just have to always teach them and help them and encourage them and compliment them. Do they need for us just to ignore them and hope they go away? No, they need encouragement. And so we need to become people of encouragement. How many of you have ever read the book of Barnabas? Have you seen the book Barnabas? It's really good. And I'll think of the name of the author in a minute. Aubrey Johnson is his name. And it's the Barnabas Factor. If you ever get to read that book, it's a whole study of Barnabas and how he encouraged people in the Bible and how we should encourage people in the church today. What a great book. He does a good job. This is an illustration. William Arthur Ward said, "Flatter me, and I may not believe you. Criticize me, and I may not like you. Ignore me, and I may not forgive you, but encourage me, and I will not forget you." Just be an encourager. And I know there's some people in our church here that encourage other people. That's what they need. They really need encouragement. 1 Thessalonians 5:11 tell us to encourage one another and build each other up. That's what Paul knew that was really what was lost in the church of Thessalonica. They needed more people encouraging the church. And so Paul knew that was a problem in their church. So he told them to make sure they encourage one another. You know, we shouldn't have to tell our members to encourage, should we? It should just be a part of our nature. And it's not a gift for everybody, but if we just learn to encourage people, it makes a big difference. It really does, especially in the next generation. They get enough discouragement. They need encouragement. So what is it that can change the life of another person? Encouragement. That's what can change people. And I want to let you know this. I've learned that I can say things that my daughter Heather and her husband John can't say, and I can get away with it. And sometimes it's kind of harsh, but he doesn't mind. He doesn't mind. You know, I'll tell him things. We'll have discussions about girls and dating and all kinds of things, and he knows where I stand on those issues. But Heather doesn't want to have that conversation with him, but I will, and he knows I will. And it is encouraging if he can talk to me and we can encourage one another. The third area of focus in developing our young adults is example. They need to see us doing it. I'll never forget. We were moving somebody, it was Gil and Glenda, from their home to an apartment on Gibraltar.
Mhm.
Do you remember that, Randy?
Yeah.
Chuck?
Yep.
I bet, yeah, Lewis. And one of the things that one of our men said is, he said, "I couldn't believe all the elders were there." And I said, "Well, there were some deacons there too, you know, but we had a big group of people, and it's an example. They need to see an example, and they notice them too. That's important, to get to be an example." So Paul talks about the character development of young women in verses 4-5, which Bill read for us just a moment ago. The first area of character development in young women is to be loving toward their husbands and children. Now, why would Paul have to tell the women to love their husbands and their children? Wow. I read that and I thought, what kind of women were they? You know, I've never seen a mother that didn't love her children. And some of them love their husbands. Not all of them, but most of them. You know, I was doing a counseling session with a couple at a church previous in Ohio. And this lady was a big executive at the auto plant, and he was in real estate. Well, you know how bad real estate is sometimes? It just goes in the dumpster. you know? And he wasn't doing really well in real estate, but she's hauling in a lot of money. And so I asked him, you know, I asked him, do you love your wife? And he said, oh yeah. And he told her he loved her right in front of me. And then I asked her, I said, Shelley, do you love him? And she said, I love him, but I don't respect him. Because she was making more money than he was. And there was a problem there. And oh, that marriage was in trouble. They're still together today, but they're not doing well because she doesn't respect him. One thing that Paul said in Ephesians chapter 5, men, love your wives. Why? Because women need to hear that you love them. They need to hear it more than we need to hear it, the men. But then at the end of chapter 5, he says, women, respect your husbands. Husbands, love your wives. Women, respect your husbands. And that was lacking in that marriage. And it was really a problem. I still use that in my counseling today and even in my wedding ceremony. Yeah.
I just,
Tyler?
every time it's brought up, I want to point out, it says, because I was saying it like that too one time, to a counselor.
Yeah.
I was like, yes, you know, she got to respect me, you know, I'm the head of the house. He says, let's open it up. It says, you got to love your wife like Christ loved the church,
Yeah.
which is way harder than anything we are even really capable of. You know, well, up till that age, I thought, well, that's a pretty good line in the Bible there. I like that one. But now I'm afraid of it. I mean, that's a tall order. As much as we turn our back on Christ and he continually loves us and forgets all the wrongdoing.
Yep. And the men have to protect their wives, love her, protect her. He said he gave his life for the church. So men have to step in front of the gun. If somebody aims a gun at your wife, you got to step and take it. So Jesus gave his life for his bride. And you know, that's the one thing that I find interesting. And this is why I take it to the next level. And that is, you can talk all you want about me, but don't ever say anything bad about my wife, about my bride. And Jesus feels the same way. And it scares me every time I hear somebody say something bad about his bride, the church. That's dangerous. I would not want to be standing next to them on the judgment day when somebody talks down about the bride, the church. That's dangerous. So that's what Paul was communicating to the church there. So the young women are loving toward their husband and children. I have a problem seeing that, but evidently it was going on in the island of Crete. The women were not fulfilling their roles in the homes. Secondary character development of young women has to do with their self-control. Be self-controlled. Now, you wouldn't think you'd have to tell women that, would you? But you do. He told those women to be self-controlled. Evidently, there were some that weren't controlling themselves. And that was something he addressed in this letter. And that's something we need to encourage our young ladies here. In fact, I found that our young ladies will listen to women, older women, more than they will the elders or a deacon or a teacher.
Or their fathers.
Or their fathers, that's right. So yeah, our older women need to teach our younger women how to be self-controlled. The third area of character development for young women is to be kind. Why do you think he had to tell them to be kind? Because they weren't being kind. Yeah, they were being mean. That's the reputation of the Cretans on the island of Crete. They were known as drunkards, people that were out of control. And I told you, whenever there was a play in the first century, if it was a drunk, he was a Cretan. And they just said, he's from Crete. Well, we understand he's a drunk, you know. They just didn't control himself on that island. The fourth and final area of character development for young women is the most controversial one. They're to be subject to their husbands. Now, how do we teach that? It's not that the woman is a slave to the husband, but being subject is different. One way I like to relate this to the people that I do premarital counseling with is, your wife is not to be your slave. She's supposed to be your help. That's what Genesis calls her. She's supposed to be a helper and a helpmate. That's how it's described in Genesis. And so what I'm saying is, and this is one thing I always do. How many of you guys ask your wife for advice? I do. Fran has so much more wisdom than I do. Do you, Louis?
She
Well,
gives
I
it to
knew. I know we butch you. I thought you would. Anybody else ask their wife for advice?
I always did.
Yeah.
I always did.
Oh, of course.
You know I did.
That's right, that's right. We know,
I'll
that's
be
true.
walking through a wall. Whoa, where am I at now?
What's my condition today, right? You gotta ask him that. Fran has so much common sense. I always ask her a question before I make a decision. And I do it in a roundabout way. Huh, Fran, what do you think? What do you think of this thing I'm about to do? And she'll give me her advice. And, it's really good. I love that advice. And a
And
lot
even-
of times women have more wisdom than we do.
What you're doing
Ed?
is you're sounding board, right? You're talking to her, and you may still go with what you want to do, but at least you've talked it through,
That's
and now
right.
it makes sense.
That's
Because
right.
you had somebody to talk to, and your mate's the person to do it with.
Exactly. You know, Ed, I think this is what I tell the young people that I counsel with, premarital counseling. That the woman can make her own decisions, but if there's a tough decision that she has to make and she doesn't want to do it, guess who's supposed to? The head of the family. We have to make the final decision on some tough issues. That's not easy, is it? Because some things are hard to make. Some decisions are hard to make. And I think that it's better if we can get their support and both of us make the decision, you know, when there's a tough decision. If she doesn't want to make it, I have to. I don't want to, but I will. And so that's what the role is. In fact, in Ephesians chapter 5 and 25, it says that wife is supposed to be subject to her husband. If you back up one verse, it says they need to be subject to one another. So they preface that with, Paul says, be subject to one another. And then he says in the very next verse that women are to be submissive to their husbands. And every time I've delivered a sermon on that chapter, my brother Ron was sitting right here in this pew and he would say, Rush, you didn't go far enough where the wife is supposed to be submission to the husband. I said, I'm getting to that next week, Ron.
It's always next week, right?
Yeah, it's always next week. I'll get to it next week. But yeah, that's what the Bible teaches, and they're to be subject to their husbands. This may sound old-fashioned, but the amazing thing is that this works in a time when so many modern partnership marriages are falling apart. Why are they falling apart? Because they don't follow Titus chapter 2. They don't use it as a guideline for their marriage. And churches are falling apart because they aren't listening to what he says in Titus and understanding the very basic fiber of what the church should be. He's telling us as a church. And the whole letter is written, and it's called God's Message to a Growing Church, because the churches on the island of Crete were growing. But we know that what happened was they had run into a lot of problems, and they didn't know how to handle them. A lot of it was the women and their actions, the men, the young men and their actions. He's trying to teach them some kind of holy living. He's going to talk about that next week. We need to learn to live holy lives. What does the word holy mean? It means separate. We should not live like the world. We should be separate from the world. Romans chapter 12, which is David's favorite verse about not being conformed to the world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. We can't conform to the world. We've got to be different. That's what holy living is all about. We have to live lives that are separate and apart from society. And we have to be different from them. That's what holy living is all about. So I wanted to give you a preview of what we're going to run into as we go further on this.
Russ, I think we can see the wisdom, not just in the writer, but the Holy Spirit giving the writer wisdom.
Oh, yeah,
The mother is the nurturer in the family.
that's
And
right.
if the mother's out of control and a basket case or just whatever term or adjective you want to use, then typically the family is as well.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah, and it's going to be that way, isn't it? You know, I've heard people say this country is only gonna be as strong as its families, the family unit. But I think it's even more than that. I think this country is only gonna be as strong as the church families. Because society's a mess. The only possibility for us to exist is to have Christian families that believe in God's word and the Bible. Yeah,
I remember the strength of the family years ago was when you came home, your mother was waiting for you after school.
oh, yeah,
Today they come home to empty homes.
yep,
They stay in school for, because there's nobody at home. They gotta stay late.
yep,
So they've got other people raising them and not their family.
exactly, exactly. And that's, that's what Paul's trying to do, isn't it? He's trying to encourage
Because the
them.
church is the family.
Yeah,
we
the
are
church,
family.
that's right.
And it's only, you're right, as strong as the church is
Yeah.
the only way this nation will ever be strong. Otherwise, it'll
Yep.
give way to Satan.
And the Lord said that, Ed, in the books in the Old Testament. He said that as long as there's a faithful remnant, he called it a faithful remnant in the nation of Israel, he will be faithful to them. So he made it specifically clear, there has to be a faithful remnant. And that's what I'm hopeful for in the United States of America. We still have a faithful remnant of people that come to church and worship God and teach our children integrity and character. And that's how this country's staying in existence. And people, they talk to me and say, oh, this place is a mess. Not everybody's a mess. We still have a faithful remnant in this country. We got 5 minutes. Paul writes in Ephesians chapter 5, verse 22 to 24, for the young men. Now he's talking about our young men in the churches. The first area of character developed for young men is self-control. And he mentions that in 2 Peter 1, verses 5 through 7. He makes sure that the young men will know how to be self-controlled. How do our young men learn to be self-controlled? Not at school, not with their friends. It's got to be the church and the family. I told you about my grandson who went to breakfast with his crew from work. I think I told you that, didn't I? And how they were teasing him because his plan was not to have sex before marriage. And the only way he got that is he reads the Bible, and he comes to church, he listens to David's sermons, he gets all these scriptures. He called me last month and asked me, Grandpa, what's the difference between John the Baptist's baptism and Luke chapter 14, because he was reading Luke 14, and the baptism of Jesus Christ. So we had a discussion. He asked questions about baptism because he talked his co-worker, is going to come to church here, but he told him about baptism. So that's the way that he's learning it, not from work, because the guys he worked with are not Christians. And he's just glad that he could read the scripture and share it with them. So the second area of character developed for young men is integrity. They have to act with character, make the right decision. Just be a good person. Just do right, make good decisions and do what's right. That's what Paul said in Romans chapter 13. Pay your taxes and honor the king. And they have a stinker for a king, let me tell you. That's incredible, the kind of government that he told them to honor. He said, I put them there, so you honor the king. So being serious doesn't mean that we can never laugh or have enjoyment in our life. Jesus used humor in his messages. Proverbs 17:22, a cheerful heart is good medicine. Ecclesiastes 3:4, there's a time to weep and a time to laugh. We can have fun, just don't have fun all the time. There's times to be serious, right? And we have to know when we can have fun and when we can be serious. That's what he tells us. Humor is a good thing, but we have to realize the gospel is a serious thing. It encompasses life and death, heaven and hell matters. It means that when our lives touch other people, if all they get is a good laugh and then go on with their lives, we failed. We can have fun with them, tell jokes, talk about issues, and have fun and smile, but we also have to be serious about our religion. Our goal is to honor Jesus, go to heaven when we die, and take as many people with us as possible. And that's no joke, right? That's what he wants us to know, is the importance of always being that kind of person. So the third area of concentration for character development is young man is soundness. Be sound of mind. Expect opposition, letter D. Expect there's going to be persecution. That's one thing my grandson didn't realize, is when they were making fun of him at breakfast, he didn't realize he was being persecuted, you know? And then when he got home, his girlfriend Mariah called him and apologized. So even though she disagreed with him and his not having sex before marriage, she respected him enough to apologize, even though they were laughing at him. So Paul says we work on character development in Acts or Titus 2:8, so that those who oppose us may be ashamed because they have nothing bad to say about us. We should live the kind of lives where people can't ever question our integrity. And that's the one thing that's always going to stand out. I worked in this factory on the assembly line. It was a rough place to work. I got half a minute. Okay, Jim? Half a minute. And my machine broke down and my foreman came over and started screaming at me, and he was cursing incessantly. And the union steward stepped in. He was working next to me on his machine. And he said, you know what, Jim, you shouldn't talk that way. Russ doesn't use that kind of language. And I didn't realize that he noticed that, because everybody curses in the factory, right? But he noticed it and he stood up for me, and I appreciated that. And I think, and the foreman treated me a little bit differently after that. But that's what he wants us to learn. So how do we face this opposition? The first thing is we rejoice when the world opposes us. It's going to happen. We're going to be persecuted. Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5. The second thing we should do is remember what the Lord teaches us. The last thing for us today is facing oppositions, that we need to remember to keep our composure. That's something I know is difficult for a lot of people, including me. Keep your composure. Take it. Let it slide off your back. That's what he says. Turn the other cheek. He's not talking about somebody slapping you. He's talking about personal people that will attack you with verbiage. So, closing, I really believe God will take care of the future. If we're faithful and obedient today, the Bible teaches that one day Jesus will return for his church. Everyone who ever lived will confess that Jesus is Lord. Then his church will reign with him in glory. That's our ultimate future. Thanks, guys, for your contributions and your attention tonight. And what I say to my class in Rochester, please leave.
Please go home.
Please leave. They know I'm kidding.
Saved by the bell.
You gotta go home and you can't stay here.
That's right. I like that.